All right, let's get started here on the Panther-Lair Post-Game / Panther-Lair Show live on a Wednesday night. I know I'm late. Somebody just said I'm late. I'm sorry. I was doing a lot of stuff from post-game coverage to try and get ready for Panther-Lair.com, and all of a sudden it was 9:29. I realized I hadn't started the streaming software yet, so we had to get that started. But we are here now to talk about Pitt's 75-54 win at Louisville tonight. Kind of works out well when you have these Wednesday night basketball games. You know, we always do our live Panther-Lair show here on youtube.com / Panther-Lair.com. Just have to push it back an hour or so. Usually we started at 8:30. But you have a 7 o'clock game, 7 to 9. You know, do a little bit of writing and what you need to do after the game, and then get started on the live show right here at 9:30. So we're letting everybody sort of filter in as we get started. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right here at youtube.com / Panther-Lair.com. We'll get everybody in here. You can always, that subscribe button is right down there. You should be able to see it there. And if you don't, just look around on YouTube. You'll find it. Turn on your alerts so you get notifications sent to your phone whenever we go live. You never miss anything. youtube.com / Panther-Lair.com. And of course, stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting, all at Panther-Lair.com. And look, Louisville's not very good. We'll say that right off the bat. Okay, we don't need to pretend like Pitt beat a good team tonight. They didn't beat Clemson. They didn't beat Duke. They didn't beat some of the teams they have beat. You know, there wasn't as good a win as Virginia or anything like that. But what Louisville is a conference opponent. And what tonight's game was a road game. And it was an opportunity for Pitt to obviously add another win to the schedule and get to 13 wins overall and 6 in the ACC. It was an opportunity to not have one of those quad 4 losses, which you want to avoid. They're almost, you're hurt almost as much by the quad 4 losses as you are by the quad 1 wins. And as a brief aside, we're still talking about Pitt's NCAA tournament resume. As a matter of fact, we're talking more and more about it every day, which is a pretty unique situation to be in that we haven't been in. I don't remember. When was the last time we were seriously and legitimately talking about Pitt's NCAA tournament resume? Well, here we are. And if you're going to build a case for yourself as an NCAA tournament team, you can't lose games like Pitt played tonight. Even if they are on the road, you can't lose a game like this against a team that's only won 2 games all year and has not won a conference game yet. You can't be the first one to fall. You can't be Louisville's first ACC win of this season. That's not happening. That's not possible. Because if you do, you're going to really put a big hole in your NCAA tournament chances. And even more than that, even more than resumes and things like that, if you are who we think you are, or you are who you think you are, or you are who you sort of look like you're supposed to be over the last 15 games, then you shouldn't lose games like this. You know, if you really are this team that we keep talking about and we keep watching and we keep seeing, then you shouldn't lose games like this. You should go out and pretty much put your foot on the throat and control the game from the jump, which Pitt more or less did. They fell behind early. They were down 14-10, and then they took over. And they never really looked back. They were down 14-10 with about 12, 13 minutes left to play. So for a solid 32, 33 minutes, they were in control of this game. And it really wasn't all that close. Even when the score kind of got close, when it got into single digits, it was 7 points right before halftime. Greg Elliott made a jump shot to make it 9 points at halftime. Louisville cut the lead down to 9 in the second half. The TV announcers I almost think they were hoping for Louisville to make it close because they kept talking about, Louisville just needs to hang around here. Louisville just needs to hang around. I mean, come on, man. Give the winning team a little bit of credit here. And I guess you're trying to talk up the storyline. You're trying to pretend like it's not the sort of drubbing that it is, where the outcome is pretty much decided, because I think the announcers, and I generally think the ACC network has some solid announcers. And I like Wes Durham a lot. I think he does a great job. I think they sensed what I sensed, what you sensed, that this game was, Louisville was never going to win this game. Pitt had this game under control. And even when Louisville cut into the lead, if they made a basket or made two baskets and cut it down to single digits or got a little bit closer, you never felt like Pitt was going to really let them back in it. And it's not like Pitt was making a shot every time they went down the court. They had empty possessions, but they were defending really well. And they still gave up a lot of rebounds. They only got out rebounded by one. They still gave up a lot of rebounds, but they more or less kept Louisville from really living down there and getting 2-3 stacked possessions down there. They did a good job. I thought they defended really well, and then they would make the shots that they need to make to keep Louisville at arm's length or further. And it ends up being a 21-point win, the largest margin of victory for Pitt in an ACC road game ever. Since they joined the conference. They had never won a road conference game by more than 14 points. And that happened in 2016. They won a game at Syracuse in February of 2016 by 14, 66-52. That was the biggest margin of victory for an ACC road game for Pitt. Other than that, they had a game in that first season when they first joined the conference where they beat NC State by 12. They had a game in 2017 at Boston College where they won that one by 11. And then this past Saturday, they beat Georgia Tech on the road by 11. And so they've had 4 games that they've won on the road, in ACC games on the road, by double digits. Well, after tonight, now it's 5. And this is by far the biggest margin of victory they've had. And here's the other thing. They're 6-2 in the ACC now. That matches Pitt's best start to the ACC schedule through 8 games. They've never done better than 6-2 through 8 games. And that 6-2 record was in their first season joining the conference. 2013-14, they won 6 out of their first 8 games. They lost game number 9 and went 6-3. You can do the math here. Pitt wins on Saturday against Florida State. They will be 7-2 for their best start to the ACC schedule ever. This is a team that is legitimately playing as well, if not better, than any team Pitt has had since joining the ACC. I'm not saying it's the best team Pitt has had since joining the ACC, but I'm saying that right now, at this point in the season, they are playing better than any team Pitt has had, or they're playing as well as, if not better, than any team Pitt has had since joining the conference. You're talking about this is the 10th year, 10th season in the league. And this is the best team we've seen. And they're playing like it. I'd have to go back and, we could, if this keeps up, maybe we compare it to Pitt's first ACC team, that 2013-14 team. I don't even remember anything about the roster. But we can maybe compare it and see if, how does it stack up against that one. But for now, we can say this one's pretty good. And this one's pretty good because of the players they have on the court. And in particular, they're pretty good because of Jamarius Burton. He was a stud tonight. I thought Jamarius Burton, I don't know if it was the best game he's played at Pitt, but it might have been the most impressive game he played at Pitt. Little 10-point game, 5 of 9 shooting. I don't think he even went to the free throw line. Look at the stats here. No, he didn't. He didn't even go to the free throw line. He missed 3 3-pointers, so he was 5 of 6 from inside the arc, but he had 11 assists, 2 turnovers, and he was always in control of this game. If Pitt needed him to score 30 points tonight, I fully believe he could have done that, but they didn't need him to because Greg Elliott was knocking shots down, and Nike Sabandi had a big first half. They didn't need Jamarius Burton to score 30, but I have no doubt he could have done it if that's what the game called for. Instead, he did exactly what the game required of him. He took care of his teammates. He set guys up. And when Louisville was starting to maybe defend a little bit better, he showed, again, hey, you know what? I can drive on you fools. Like, you guys can't stop me. All right? And once you realize that I can drive on you, I'm going to take one step forward and dish it out to Greg Elliott, who's going to drain a 3, which Elliott did 5 times tonight. We'll go back and look at the stats. We'll go back and look at the tape. We'll go back and look at the stats to see how many of Greg Elliott's 3-pointers were assisted by Jamarius Burton, but it was more than one. There was a few of them that came from Burton because he just, including with 38 seconds to go, Pitt's last bucket of the game, the final basket anybody made in the game. Burton to Elliott. He was in charge of this game from the start. And if Jamarius Burton plays like he did tonight, I'll take you'll take those chances. You'll take Pitt's chance. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. You're not going to say that Pitt will win every game, but if Jamarius Burton plays like he did tonight, they'll have a chance against any team in the ACC. I mean, it's true. I mean, he was just that sharp. 10 and 11, really, really good. Really impressive. Like I say, I don't know if it was his best game. He's had higher scoring games. He's had better games. He's had better, production, bigger numbers and all this stuff. But in terms of just impressive, I mean, he was impressive. I mean, think about it. They were talking, again, to come back to the broadcast, they were talking about on the broadcast that, clearly he's an all-ACC player right now. This is what the announcers were saying. This is a game where he scored 10 points. It's not like he was just scoring all over the place, but it was so clear the impact Jamarius Burton had on the game and how dominant he was that even on TV they were saying this guy's one of the 5 best players in the conference right now. And that's how he's playing. That's how he's playing. And if they have that, and I, a tweet during the game really stood out to me. I think it was our friend Chris Carter from the Post-Gazette said that, the thing about Pitt this year is they have so many scoring threats and they have so many shooters that if one guy's not hitting, somebody else will. So tonight, bring up the box score here. When Blake Hinson goes 2 of 11 from the floor and Nelly Cummings goes 1 of 8, Greg Elliott goes 9 of 12. Jamarius Burton goes 5 of 9. You know what I mean? Nike Sabandi goes 4 of 6. You're not going to stop all 5 of those guys on one night. You're probably not going to stop more than 2 of them. You're not going to get a bad night out of more than 2 of those guys on most nights. And if you have the other 3 going, if Cummings and Hinson aren't hitting, but Burton, Sabandi, and Elliott are, you're going to have a hard time beating Pitt. I mean that's you're not going to stop all 5. You're probably not going to stop 4. And I think most nights it's going to be tough to contain even just 3 of them. There's so many of those guys. And I don't know if any one of those guys, basketball is such a sport where one guy really can change an entire team. You know what I mean? One guy, we talk about NIL deals. It doesn't make sense to give a cornerback or a wide receiver or an offensive tackle like this much money because it's one guy out of 11 or one guy out of 22, and one guy can't impact the game quite as much. But in basketball, if you get that one guy, he can really change the fortune of your team. I don't know if Pitt has that one guy that if you took him and put him on this team, that team's a Final Four team. But what they do is they have like 5 guys who can all make shots, 5 guys who can all score, 5 guys who can all shoot from outside and can also, take you off the dribble to the point where they could shot fake, take two dribbles inside the line and pull up for a jump shot, or shot fake, take 2 dribbles inside the line and dish to a guy who's open. They've got a lot of scoring threats on this team, and it's tough to stop them all on the same night. And that's going to give them, that's what's got, that's how they've gotten to 13-6 overall. It's how they've gotten to 6-2 in the ACC. And it's why, I think they're going to keep winning. They'll lose a couple more games between, now and the end of the year. But, this is 8 games of conference play. Saturday will be 9. Coming up on that halfway point. So you got a long way to go, but you also have what I would consider a pretty ample sample size. Ample sample. People don't say that more often. I'm surprised. You talk about small sample sizes, but I don't often hear people talk about the ample sample. But maybe we'll try and get that to catch on. But this is an ample sample size. This is not just good first week of the season. They're doing it. They're doing it on the road. They've done it against some good teams. And they're taking care of business against those teams that you just can't afford to lose to. You can't afford to have a loss to Louisville. You can't afford to have a loss to Georgia Tech. You really can't afford to have a loss against Florida State at home. You need to take care of business there as well. Clemson, it's not a bad loss. Duke, it's not a bad loss. You need to get the good wins, and you need to avoid the bad losses. And I think they've done a little bit of the first, and they've done a pretty good job with the second. And they need to keep that going. You can't lose to Louisville when Louisville's 2-17 or 2-16 coming into the game. You can't lose to Louisville when Louisville's 0-7 in the ACC. And they didn't. They controlled the game and won a conference game on the road by 20. It's pretty remarkable stuff. It really is. And I think we all keep trying to figure out if we're buying into this team, but it's it's getting more and more compelling to buy in on almost on a game by game basis. All right, I want to get to the comments and questions. It is a post game show, so I want to get everybody everybody's thoughts and questions. If you have a comment, we'll read it. If you have a question, we'll try to answer it to the best of our ability. If you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered, you can be a super chatter. Click the little $sign down there at the bottom of the chat screen, and you can kick a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate that for sure. You can show your support for Panther-Lair.com, and we'll make sure we get to your comment or your question if you're a super chatter. Let me see. Oh, real quick, I got to tell you about our friend Chris Gates. You guys know about Chris. I always kind of bring him up right when we're about to start taking everybody's comments and questions. Chris is from Chris Gates Fitness, all right? And you should know about this by now. Chris is an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh. He works with people all over the world to create customized fitness and nutrition programs that work. He's also a huge Pitt fan, and he loves supporting the Wednesday live show every week. I think people from watching this podcast, watching this live stream, have gone to check out what Chris is doing, and they've been pretty happy with what they've found. So make sure you subscribe to Chris's mailing list. You go to chrisgatesfitness.com. It's Chris, Chris, Gates, Gates, fitness.com, and click on mailing list to get signed up. He publishes new articles and podcasts every week. Every Monday, he sends out an email update with the latest content. I get this email. It's awesome. I read through the stuff as much as I can, and it's great information. It's good research. Well, it's presented really well, and it's informative, and it'll be better if you get it. You also get a free 21-day program as a thank you for signing up. So go to chrisgatesfitness.com, Chris, Chris, Gates, Gates, fitness.com. Click on the mailing list button to get signed up for what Chris has to offer. He's not taking any new clients right now, but you can still take advantage of all the knowledge and information that he's put on his website, chrisgatesfitness.com. Thanks to Chris for supporting the podcast. We appreciate it big time. He does a great job there, and we appreciate his support. All right, let's get into the comments and questions. Evan D402 says, Florida State Saturday, can't let it slip away. Definitely the better team on paper, but they're a streaky team. Don't let them get hot. Take care of the ball and should be a W. We've said that many times before, though. Yeah, we'll keep saying it. I mean, that'll be the key. You got to, protect the ball. Pitt had 13 turnovers tonight. Not a terrible number. I think you'll live with that. Jamie Dixon used to, Jamie Dixon's 3 goals. He always wanted to shoot, or he wanted to hold the other team under 40%. He wanted to out-rebound them by 10 and keep his own turnovers under 12. Those were the 12 or less. Those were Jamie Dixon's 3 keys to winning when he was at Pitt. I'll never forget it. I mean, it's burned into my brain because I heard him say it so much. So 13 turnovers, it's one more than they would like to have, but it's not terrible. Rebounding-wise, they got out-rebounded by 1, which, quite frankly, for this Pitt team this year, at least the way they've been playing in ACC play, getting out-rebounded by 1's not that's not the worst. I mean, it almost feels like a win right there. And then as far as I don't know why I'm going down the Jamie Dixon path here, but they held Louisville to 33.9% from the field. How about Louisville had 6 assists on 19 made baskets? Pitt, 21 assists on 28 baskets. You do the math. What's that? 75% of their baskets had an assist. That's good stuff. That's good passing. That's good ball movement. This offense can have a tendency to get a little stagnant. This offense can have a tendency to lead to some standing around and the ball not moving very well. I think we saw that in the second half against Duke. It wasn't happening tonight. They were moving the ball well. And I'll come back to him again. I mean, Jamarius Burton, aside from the 11 assists, I feel like he was moving the ball particularly well and really kind of running the offense. I mean, Jamarius Burton was the point guard tonight. Nelly Cummings would bring the ball up the court sometimes. He might even set the offense in motion. Jamarius Burton was the point guard. I mean, he was the guy making it happen in this game, and the result was a 21-point victory. JM Zags says Louisville is a very bad basketball team. Pitt got the dominant win that we needed to see, though. This team continues to prove that they can play. And that's the thing, JM Zags. Louisville's not good. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, boy, it was a great win. It was, there are parts of it that were great. Jamarius Burton's play, Greg Elliott's play. I think Pitt's work on defense, the fact that they, got a 20-point win on the road in conference play. But when you're a good team, if you are a good team, there are two things you have to accomplish, right? One is beating other good teams, and two, and almost as important, is not losing to bad teams. Look, you can, in college football, you can almost play yourself into the playoffs just by not losing to bad teams. You get one solid win and you're a playoff team as long as you just avoid losing to bad teams. What sunk Pitt in 2021? It wasn't that they didn't have any wins over good teams. I mean, they beat Clemson and that's kind of it. Really, the biggest problem for Pitt is that they lost to Western Michigan and lost to Miami. And I mean, Western Michigan in particular. Just like this year, it's losing to Georgia Tech and Louisville. Don't lose to bad teams. You can establish yourself as a good team simply by not losing to bad teams. It's not even about beating bad teams. It's just not losing to bad teams. And this Pitt basketball team, 2 games in a row now, not to mention some of the other, avoiding the bad non-conference losses, which I think they did. 2 games in a row now, they've gotten a solid win at Georgia Tech and then a good win at Louisville. And when I say good or I say solid, I'm talking about the way Pitt played and kind of how dominant they were. They weren't as dominant as you would have liked to have seen them be against Georgia Tech, but they were against Louisville. They were really good against Louisville. And that's what a good team did. They did to Louisville what a good team should do to Louisville, even on the road. Ed Mahoney says, another nice win tonight. Louisville is struggling, but another win on the road. If Pitt had a big man at center, who knows how far they could go in the tournament this year. Fun when you are winning. Yeah, the big man thing is going to be the case all year. I think it's been fun to watch these guys to some extent, particularly Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Watching him sort of game by game step up and step forward and progress. I like, if you're talking Diaz-Graham, Guillermo Diaz-Graham versus Federico, I think Guillermo is more aggressive. I think he gets after it more. And I just think you can see him really enjoying the matchups he's getting in the ACC. And he's not winning them all. I don't know if he's won any matchup. I mean, he's still getting pushed around. He's getting out rebounded. He's getting knocked around quite a bit. But boy, every time, I mean, he Chumbawambas the crap out of it, man. Every time he gets knocked down, he gets backed up again. You never can keep Guillermo down. Unless he takes himself down, which this guy has more ambition for diving on the floor after loose balls than any 7-footer I've seen in a long time. I don't even know if Aaron Gray dove after loose balls like this. Aaron Gray was a pretty big dude. Take a long time to get back up. I don't know if I've, but I mean, he gets after it and he seems to be really enjoying it. Even when it's not going his way, you see the aggressiveness, you see the attitude a little bit that he's got, that he plays with. I think he embraces the defensive assignments he's getting. Look at the photo up on the screen right there. I mean, that's an intense guy playing defense against someone who's quite a bit older, quite a bit bigger, quite a bit stronger than him. I like how Federico has developed. I think he's been playing better and showing signs of progress. Now we have another photo of Guillermo on the screen. He's kind of getting pushed backward. But it's just been, I think it's been fun to watch Guillermo develop. Now, I don't know if Guillermo or Federico are going to be playing in an ACC level by the end of the season, but I think they're going to be closer to it than they are right now. And it's going to be fun to watch between now and then. It's going to be fun to watch how they develop and how they grow, playing, this schedule, night in, night out, playing ACC games, night in, night out. And it's been fun to watch so far, and I think it's going to continue to be as this season progresses. Let's Let's see here. Sticky Bandits. You're talking football. I wasn't gonna take the football comments here, but since I already mentioned Sticky Bandits, it says they just said on the ACC huddle that Phil Dracovic will take Pitt's offense to the next level and will be what they thought Slovis was. That's got to get you a little excited. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what Drakovic's going to do. I don't know how this offense is going to come together. Excuse me. I think Kanate Mumpfield can be pretty good. I'm actually going to write about that some more this week and probably next week as well. But we'll see what Dracovic can do. It'll just like it relied on just like it came down to Keaton Slovis and how he played last year. It's going to come down to Phil Dracovic and how he plays this year. That's what the offense and by extension the season are going to rely on. Vince Pilata says, "Are we starting to see our bench become a real asset?" Yeah, tonight Pitt had 23 points off the bench, 12 from Nike Sabandi. 6 from Guillermo and 5 from Nate Santos. I tell you, I think it really was in the first half. I think Nike Sabandi and in particular Nike Sabandi was the spark in the first half, and he really kind of, like I said, Pitt started off slow. Sabandi was on the court for less than a minute, and he knocked down a 3 when he came in at the 16-11 mark. I think he came in at 16-11. Less than a minute later, he knocked down 3. He hit 3 more threes in the next, about 6 minutes of the game. And really kind of, after Pitt fell behind 14-10, it was Sabandi knocking down those threes that really kind of pulled them back, not just even with Louisville, but pushed them ahead for good. That once they took the lead there at 16-14, I guess Louisville tied it at 16-16, but then Guillermo Diaz-Graham hit a 3 to make it 19-16, followed by another Sabandi 3, and the game was out of reach. Louisville never, got it closer than, I don't think they got it closer than 6. They might have had it at 5 at one point. Just kind of glancing over it here. Yeah, the announcers kept talking about Louisville's just got to keep it close and then try and get a run. The announcers kept talking about ways for Louisville to come back in the game, which I guess is part of it. You want to make it interesting. You want to have storylines and things to talk about and things to look forward to and ways to make it seem like it's a really exciting game to keep the viewership in place. But I felt like they were calling the game from the Louisville perspective of what Louisville needed to do to win rather than what Pitt needed to do to sort of hold on and pull away, which is ultimately what they did. I mean, I think they gave Pitt a lot of respect, but I don't know if there's something weird about how they were calling it. But they really, Louisville, back to the point about the bench, once Sabandi struck and then Nate Santos hit a 3, Guillermo hit a 3. I mean, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 threes in a row. I guess they hit 7 threes in a row, and it was all, the first one was Greg Elliott, and then it was, Sabandi, Guillermo, Sabandi, Nate Santos, and that ultimately put the game out of reach. The bench did it, 3 from Sabandi, 1 from Guillermo, and 1 from Nate Santos. Put the game out of reach, and Louisville never got close again. And so I don't know if the bench is becoming an asset long term, but they certainly were tonight. Let's see. Who's next? Scott Mitchell says there's nothing to reasonably complain about tonight. Yes, Louisville is bad, but we doubled the spread. Even if 2 shooters go cold, we have ways to score points. That's pretty amazing. I think that's a good point, Scott. What was the downside tonight? They got out-rebounded, but we've all come to get used to that. And like I said, they only got out-rebounded by 1, so it sort of feels like, well, it was almost like a win. They got out-rebounded by less than they typically do. They didn't really turn the ball over that much. Kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit at the end, and it felt like they were going to let Louisville maybe get back into the game a little bit. Although, it was still like a 16-point game. Louisville cut it to 14, and it felt like, it was getting dicey, and then Blake Hinson hit a 3 to make it, a 17-point game again or something like that. I mean, it was never really all that close. I guess it was a 13-point game or 14, whatever it was, in the final 4 or 5 minutes. So they kind of slowed it down a little bit. You'd like to see them stay aggressive, but they handled the press well. I don't know if they turn it over at all against the press. When Louisville went to zone, they seemed to be comfortable attacking that. It didn't seem to really faze them too much. They didn't get baskets out of every possession against the zone. Louisville didn't do it that much, but they had a couple empty possessions in there, but nothing too terrible. They got into foul trouble, but they were able to handle it. The bench played well. And they survived having Nelly Cummings and Blake Hinson really not shooting very well at all. 3 of 19, I think, for those two guys combined. They survived it. That would be a negative, is the play of Cummings and Hinson. But it turns into a positive because how other guys stepped up and what the end result ended up being. So, yeah, I'm struggling. What would be a negative? If you could think of a negative, let us know. Me and Scott Mitchell want to know what was negative about Pitt's game here, because we can't think of anything. Scrolling through here. Panther Room says, I think it's safe to say Pitt basketball is back. When Jamie Dixon was here, we were a competitive team who normally lost first or second round, but not dominant, not a competitive team. I'm still refraining from the Pitt basketball is back just because I'm sort of, I'm just kind of living in the now, man. Pitt basketball's back. Pitt, what? I don't know. I think for Pitt basketball to truly be back, it has to happen over a series of years. You have to have a program. You have to have extended success. Right now, they're a really good team, playing really well and positioning themselves to be one of the better teams in the ACC. Does that mean Pitt basketball is back? Does that mean Pitt basketball is forward? Does that mean Pitt basketball is left or right or in between? I don't know. It means that right now with this team, they're playing really well. That's what's happening. I don't know if Pitt basketball returned or left or back or whatever. I don't know, but they're playing really well right now, and that's that's pretty good. And to be honest, I'm not thinking a lot about the future because Nike Sabandi, Nelly Cummings, Jamarius Burton. These guys are done after this year. Greg Elliott, I think, these guys are done after this year. So the team next year is going to be very different. It's going to look very different. It's going to be built very differently. And even if they can, they're going to need to go to the transfer portal again because everybody does and everybody will. But who knows if they'll have the success that they had this year getting guys like Cummings, Hinson, and Elliott, in addition to previous transfers like Burton and Sabandi. They could get more guys like that, or maybe they won't. I don't know. So I'm just sort of focused on right now and what this team has done so far through 19 games and what they potentially could do over the next 12 that they have left in the regular season. So far, they've been pretty good. Let's see. Screen skipped. Let's see. Scrolling down. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the my chat screen jumped, so I lost it. Sticky Bandit says, before the season, if you would have told me we would be 6-2 in the ACC at this point in the season, I would ask you where you got your weed at cuz I need some. Well, look, you're absolutely right. I think starting the ACC schedule 6-2, going 13-6, having a legitimate shot at the NCAA tournament, a legitimate shot at 20 wins, a legitimate shot at, to be quite honest, it would be disappointing if they fall short of 20 wins at this point, because that would mean they go 6-6 over the final 12 games in the ACC. And when you look down the schedule of what they have left, they have Florida State on Saturday, Wake Forest next Wednesday at home, Miami the Saturday after that, then Carolina, another Louisville game, another Florida State game, another Boston College game, a Virginia Tech, another Georgia Tech, another Syracuse, another a Notre Dame game, and another Miami game. Miami looks good. Syracuse will be a challenge, but that's at home. I think Virginia Tech might be better than their record indicates. Carolina, obviously, you're going to have that. But, you take Pitt against... look, they should beat Florida State. Let's just take the I don't want to say gimmies, but the ones they really should win. They have 2 games against Florida State. They have Louisville. They have Boston College. Did they have another Boston? No. They have another Georgia Tech game. That's 5. Notre Dame. That's 6. They already beat Syracuse, but Syracuse has been playing better since then. But even if that's 6 that they absolutely should win, that there shouldn't be a lot of question about. That's 6 is your starting point, with chances to get good wins against Miami, Carolina, Wake, like I said, Syracuse. There are a lot of wins out there on that schedule. A lot of wins that this team, if it keeps playing the way they have, there are a lot of wins for these guys to get. And so, I don't want to say the sky is the limit, but the limit's pretty high. They only need 7 wins to get to 20. And I think you could pretty easily find 7 wins on that schedule. So now you're talking about a team where I don't know if any of us knew what to expect. I know I was very intrigued about this team before the season. If you go back and watch some of the morning pits or the live Panther-Lair shows or things that we've written or things we've talked about, back in August, September, I was very intrigued by what this team might be because I said, and the thing I kept saying over and over again is that, we haven't seen Jeff Capel put together a team like this. A team that's built this way, a team that can shoot, a team with this, this number of veteran guards. We haven't seen Jeff Capel use a team like this. This is built very differently from any of his previous teams. So let's see how this works. It was more sort of a curiosity, he's tried this and he's tried that and he's tried that. Let's try this new thing, you know what I mean? And see if this way works. The previous, 3 ways didn't work, 4 ways didn't work, or whatever. Let's try it this way. Let's see how this goes. And so far, it's going really, really well. More than halfway through the overall schedule, and approaching the halfway point of the ACC schedule, it's going pretty well. And certainly exceeding expectations. That's where I was going with that. I was curious about this team. I was curious to see what they could accomplish, but I certainly had no expectations for what they were going to do. And any expectations I had were going to be pretty low, just based on historical precedent and not really knowing. Could Greg Elliott transition from Marquette to the ACC? Could Nelly Cummings, regardless of his success against the power conference teams, could he transition from Colgate to the ACC? Blake Hinson hadn't played in 2 years. You've got these 2 Spanish guys who are like 7 feet tall. There were a lot of questions about, would Nike Sibandi ever become a contributing player? We heard so much about him on his transfer from Miami of Ohio. And then he never really, he had never really done anything here. Could he finally do something? And all those pieces are coming together. And so it's well exceeded the expectations, I would say. All right, let's see. Panther Room says, Nike plays so hard, sometimes I feel bad that he's not a starter. Well, the starter thing, and I think I talked about this on the Morning Pit earlier this week, he played 22 minutes in this game. Greg Elliott played 37, but when you're shooting 9 of 12 from the floor and 5 of 8 from 3, you're going to play a lot. 22 minutes for Sibandi matched Blake Hinson's numbers. He played 22. Nelly Cummings played 27, so only a little bit more than Sibandi played. Jamarius Burton obviously played 34. The key in this one, and it's going to be what Nike Sibandi's minutes come down to, is going to be how Greg Elliott plays. And if Greg Elliott's shooting well, and he, made Pitt's first 2 baskets, they were down 5-2, and he, lined up outside the arc, took a step inside the line, and drained a jump shot, and 30 seconds later hit a 3 in transition to give Pitt its first lead at 7-5. Elliott was rolling tonight, and so when Elliott's playing well, Sibandi's not going to get those minutes. Sibandi will play next to Elliott. It's not just only one of them on the court at a time. Sibandi can play next to Elliott with Cummings or with Burton. But if Elliott is struggling, then Sibandi is certainly in line for more minutes. If he's not, then he'll end up, playing 20 like he did tonight and playing pretty well in those 20. Let's see. JM Zags says Pitt legitimately has 4 guys that can go off for 20 points on any given night. Yeah, they do, and I'm guessing you're not even counting the guy who actually went off for 20 points tonight, right? Because, I mean, Jamarius Burton can go off for 20 on any given night. I think Nelly Cummings can. I think Blake Hinson can. And I think Nike Sabandi can. And that doesn't even count Greg Elliott, who did go off for 20 tonight. I think they've got 5 who I think each of them will have another 20-point game this season. I mean, they just have that kind of scoring. Let's see. Royce Beacom says this was one game where Pitt's losses in total rebounds and particularly offensive rebounds did not have a significant effect on the final score. No, they really didn't. Pitt had 7 offensive rebounds, got 1 second chance point. Louisville had 11 offensive rebounds, got 15 second chance points. They still got out rebounded total 34-33. Louisville had 4 more offensive rebounds than Pitt did. I actually want to look at Louisville's stat breakdown here. Yeah, they only had 4 offensive rebounds in the second half. I think that was important. Pitt only allowed Louisville to get 4 offensive rebounds in the second half, whereas Pitt had 15 defensive rebounds in the second half. And that was probably one of the keys. I thought Louisville did most of their damage, particularly on the offensive glass in the first half, and Pitt really kind of tightened up, and I thought they did a good job in the second half. Just looking through the stats real quick. Guillermo had 8 rebounds. Nelly Cummings actually had 5 rebounds. Hinson, Elliott had 4 each. Federico had 3. Sabandi had 3. Yeah, so I mean, no gaudy numbers, but actually, I mean, like for 33 rebounds from the team, where you have that kind of split, one guy with 8 and then the rest with 5, 4, 3. There's some gang rebounding in there, which I think is, something Jeff Capel's talked a lot about. They're not a great rebounding team. They're probably not going to be a great rebounding team due to, the players they have in the front court right now. But they can gang rebound well. So Nelly Cummings can come up with 5 rebounds, Hinson and Elliott can get 4 each. In addition to, a guy off the bench coming in and playing 19 minutes and getting 8 rebounds. So I thought they did a decent job with that tonight. Getting better. Will Z says 7-5 gets him in the tournament. A ways to go, but 2 wins in the next 2 makes that much more achievable. Hope the Pete is bumping again on Saturday. I would have to think that. Let's see what time this is. Let's see what time the game is. 3 o'clock. All right, 3 o'clock on Saturday. I would have to think the Peterson Event Center is going to be packed. Like, what would be the reason not to go? I don't know what else is going on. Maybe there are NFL playoff games. I don't care. But if you're a Pitt fan right now, what reasons are there not to go watch this Pitt team? I mean, they are playing really well. They've got some exciting players. They, I guess they lost the Clemson game, so they didn't pay that one off for you. But they've been playing pretty well. And they've got some good wins, and they've taken care of business against some bad teams. I gotta think the Peterson Event Center is going to have an even better atmosphere and a better environment for this one than they had for that Clemson game, which was a pretty good environment to begin with. Pretty good crowd showed up for that one. They should have a pretty good crowd for this one as well. This should be a good atmosphere. As far as what gets them into the tournament, I mean, 7-5 the rest of the way would get them to 20 wins overall. With a chance to add to that in the ACC tournament, I would have to think they'll have a chance to get at least 1 or 2 wins in the ACC tournament, which you could be looking at, 21-22 win team, and that's just going 7-5 over the rest of the regular season schedule. They should be able to do better than that. You know what I mean? I think 8-4 should be realistic, and 8-4 would put this team at 14-6 in the ACC, 21 and 21-10. Overall, with a chance, again, like I said, to win 1 or 2 more. I mean, I think if they get 21, 22, 23 wins, with a probably, 14-6 will probably get you a top 4 finish in the conference. I think you're a tournament team. I think particularly if you avoid any, if your losses are just like Miami or Carolina or something, and not Louisville, not Georgia Tech, not Boston College or anything like that. All right. Dave Yark says see my thing jumped there. Nate Santos with that one spin move with the left hand finish shows his potential. Another solid game from him makes our bench look even deeper. Add Guillermo, and this team is whatever, strong arm. This team is strong, I guess is what that emoji means. Yeah, I mean, I think Nate Santos continues to progress, and I think he continues to do good things. I think he continues to be aggressive rebounding. I think he continues to play defense well. He knocked down a 3 tonight. He's a strong driver. Every time he drives, not every time, but a lot of times when he drives, particularly in the last few games, I've been surprised at how strong and controlled he is going to the basket. I sort of expect him, partially due to his limited opportunities, getting too amped up because he's finally got a chance to go to the basket. Just partially because I don't really know what to expect out of him. I sort of think, I always find myself thinking as he starts to drive, like, he's going to lose the ball, it's going to be out of control, it's going to be some haphazard play. And it's often not the case. He often actually looks like he should probably do it a little bit more. He should be one of those guys who drives into the paint, even if he's playing from the 4. Because he's pretty strong with his drive, and he's pretty controlled with his drive, and he's actually shown an ability to finish as well. So, it's warming up a little bit with Nate Santos, and they don't need to count on him for 25 minutes a game, 30 minutes a game. What did he have tonight? Santos played 17 minutes. I think counting on him for 15 minutes a game, you can be in pretty decent shape and get some pretty good production out of him. And particularly if he continues to grow and continues to develop. All right. What else? JM Zags says Guillermo Diaz-Graham lives on the floor, plays with incredible effort. He just competes when he's out there. He does, and I think it's fun to watch. I really like how he gets after it. Like I said, he's on the floor so often. You know what I mean? Going after loose balls. I don't know if it's the enthusiasm of youth, the folly of youth. I'm not sure, but you don't want to tame that. You don't want to try and reel that in because that energy, and I think his teammates feed off of it. And I think his teammates trust him out there too. I don't think they're ignoring him on the court. I think they're willing to give him the ball and give him chances with the ball, even when he tries to make an ill-advised drive to the basket, which is not always a good idea for Guillermo to do. Sometimes that goes awry, but I think they trust him when he's on the court, so he ends up playing. What did I say he played tonight? I keep going back to this box score. He only played 19 minutes. It felt like he got more than that. It really did. Maybe he played more. He played 11 in the first half. 11 in the first half. Just kind of glancing over the plus-minus stats now while I'm looking at the box score. Jamarius Burton, no surprise, plus 27. Greg Elliott, plus 21. Nate Santos, plus 18. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, plus 20. So Pitt was plus 20 when Guillermo was on the court. Plus 18 when Nate Santos was on the court. It's not a perfect stat. Leaves a little bit to be desired. Kind of incomplete, but interesting nonetheless. John Kristovich says Pitt will make the NCAA tournament. I think they're definitely on the path to do it. Owen Bora says rebounding seems like it was an issue tonight, especially on the defensive side. I mean, I think it is all the time. I don't think there's any question about it. This is what they do. They're not a great rebounding team. They have to do it, and it's because they don't have a lot of strength in size. They have size. They have size, but they don't have a lot of strength. They don't have that physical presence, and that leads to getting beat. And Federico and Guillermo are both younger players. There's something to learn about how to rebound in the ACC and how to rebound in college basketball. They're not there yet. They're not ready. They're not ready yet, but they're doing their best. It's not for a lack of effort. I would say that they need to get stronger. They need to better understand positioning. They need to learn all of those things, but they're trying. You know what I mean? They're definitely trying. Royce Beacom says, with Cummings, Elliott, Burton, and Sabandi leaving after this year, you do have to live in the now of this year. And to some extent, that's part of Pitt, or not Pitt, that's part of college basketball overall. You're going to have to live in the now because there's going to be a lot of turnover every year. Guys leaving to the transfer portal, and then bringing in guys from the transfer portal in addition to your high school recruiting. There was a time when, the teams that really had to deal with that sort of annual turnover were the teams that had a lot of one-and-done guys. Well, that's not it right now. You know what I mean? Now it's more of, well, no, not more of, but now you have a lot more teams being affected by it or living in that kind of environment because of the transfer portal, because they're going to lose guys every year to the portal, and they're going to bring in guys who are ready to play. You're not going to necessarily just bring in Jorge and Guillermo and Federico to play as freshmen and count on them. You're going to bring those guys in and hope you get something good out of them. And you're also going to bring in Blake Hinson and Greg Elliott and Nelly Cummings and fill out your roster that way. Fill out your roster with experienced veteran players who can, if you had success last season, hopefully they can help you keep it rolling. And if you didn't, hopefully they can help you turn it around. And so far, Pitt's gotten the latter with the guys they brought in. Eric Rogers says, got to tip my cap to Jeff Capel. I was hard on him early, but he's done an amazing job. I think he earned a lot of the criticism he got in the early years, and he earns all the praise he gets right now. Mark K. I don't want to mispronounce your last name. Did Jeff Capel set up the team differently than he did in the past, or is it more a matter of who he could recruit this year and the team just happened to get better? I think, intentionally or otherwise, he did set up the team differently than he did in the past. Like bringing in all the veteran guards they brought and bringing in all the shooters. And not that they didn't want veteran guards in the past, not that they didn't want shooters in the past, but that was the specific intention this season. And that's what they went out and got. And that's who they brought in. Greg Elliott, shooter. Blake Hinson, shooter. Nelly Cummings, veteran guard who also can shoot. They remade this team and rebuilt this team in a certain way, following a certain blueprint. And it's led to a lot of success. Now, I don't know if, I think each year is put together differently. I think there's a process that's for each season that is different from year to year. I do think prior to this year, Jeff Capel and his staff said, we got to get some veteran guards in here and we got to get shooters. And at the time, they wanted those things and needed those things to help take the pressure off John Hughley. That, it's just, I think they looked at it and said, well, we just don't, last year we didn't have anybody who could be a threat from outside, so it was easy to double on Hughley, and that made life difficult for us because we had no way to sort of make teams pay for it. So we need to go out and get shooters, and that's what they did. And they got veteran guards. And all of this was done in the interest of creating a threat from outside that would take pressure away from the post and give John Hughley more room to operate and give him outlets to pass to if he got double teamed. If you're going to double team John Hughley, okay, but we're going to pass it out and we got guys on the outside who can make shots. And if you want to stay out and guard the perimeter and only put one guy on Hughley, he's going to eat your lunch. And that's what he should be able to do. That's how it was supposed to work. That's how it was built, and that's why it was built that way. Now, it turns out they weren't going to have John Hughley, or they haven't had John Hughley, and they're not going to have John Hughley. But all these other pieces they put in place are working together pretty well. Patrick Broderick says, it's kind of refreshing not to have people calling for heads to roll every day, isn't it? It sure is. Yeah, it's a lot more fun this way. Evan D402 says, is there a college basketball award for sixth man of the year? If so, Nike would have to be in the conversation. I think so. But I'm not sure. I think the ACC does something like that. Brock McDonagh says Florida State will be a challenging game. They're a big team with their smaller starter being 6'5". Yeah, they Florida State's always got size. I mean, Florida State, I think, is always, Leonard Hamilton has always brought in some big, long athletes, and that's always going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge for Pitt. I don't know if they quite have, I haven't looked at them closely enough to say, but I mean, look, Duke was able to create some very challenging matchups But Duke was also, I think, very unique in the way that roster is built. I'm not sure that everybody in the ACC can do that against Pitt or defend Pitt in the way that Duke in the way that Duke did. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Florida State will try to replicate what Duke did in the second half of that game, but I don't know if they're going to be successful with it. And right now, I mean, this team is playing really well. I think they're going to be ready for whatever challenge gets thrown at them, and Florida State will definitely present a challenge, but it's hard to bet against this Pitt team at this particular moment in time. Let's see. Wolf HD says, do you think Pitt will add a big man in recruiting or look into the transfer portal? I don't know. I mean, it probably depends on whether Blake Hinson, if John Hughley comes back, right? I guess that's kind of open-ended. I think the expectation and the hope are that John Hughley is back for next season. They talk about him trying to seek a red shirt, which would make it sound like he's coming back for next season. And if he does, you have Hughley and you have, Federico, and you have Guillermo Diaz-Graham. You have 3 centers. I'm not really sure you need to go get a big man in high school or the transfer portal. Now, if you lose Hughley or if Federico transfers or Guillermo transfers or whatever, and I'm not saying that because I think any of those things are going to happen. I'm only saying it because you just have to expect it as always. You have to always account for it as a possibility. If one of those things were to happen, then yeah, you would probably look to supplement the depth a little bit better. But for now, I don't see a need for it if you have all 3 of those guys back. Michael Thomas says, odds of Blake Hinson returning. You think Capel will go after upperclassmen transfers from now on? Seems to be working well. I mean, I think it's always going to be a mix and depend on what you need in a particular year. These 5th and 6th year senior guards were great transfers to bring in. But if you can get a young transfer, talented player who's got a year or 2 of college basketball experience, but you're going to be able to keep them around for 2 to 3 years, there's value in that too. And so it'll be a mix depending on what they need and what they want and what they can go out and get. As far as Blake Hinson, I mean, I have no reason to think he's not going to come back next year. My expectation is he'll be on the team next year, so that's a good thing, particularly when you talk about some of the losses they're going to have. They're going to need guards for next year, though, and they're bringing in Jalen Lowe and Carlton Carrington. Obviously, you hope Dior Johnson is back and available to play. I mean, I'm sure Pitt hopes Dior Johnson is back and available to play. But you're going to need some young guards and probably a transfer or 2 to fill out that group, kind of build the backcourt. But all right, 75-54 Pitt win, biggest margin of victory in a road ACC game for Pitt ever. 21-point win at Louisville. Panthers improved to 13-6 overall, 6-2 in the ACC. It is a good night, Pitt fans. And I hope you enjoyed it. I think you probably did, and I appreciate you checking in here for the live post-game show. It's been a lot of fun. I know I enjoyed this. It was a lot more fun than when we did the Duke game last week. So we enjoy it. We'll have to keep doing it for these Wednesday games. We won't have one next week, but I'll tell you about that on the Morning Pit on Friday. Got some plans. Don't want to jinx anything just yet. But thanks for tuning in tonight, though. It's been a lot of fun here on the live Panther-Lair show, the live Panther-Lair Post-Game. Post-game shows are always more fun than the regular weekly show, so I'm glad everybody was able to tune in and join us here. I know I had a really good time. Make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go check out ChrisGatesFitness.com and enjoy the rest of the night. I'm going to bed. I imagine you probably are too. But have a great rest of the night. Enjoy your Thursday and your Friday. And we'll be back right here for another Morning Pit coming up here Thursday morning on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Have a good night, everybody.